I'll be going through my opponent's last speech and offering refutations to the arguments he presented, and then, if I have time, recapping on the negative philosophy. So my opponent started with our two values. He said essentially, I only value the human rights of the citizens of a particular government. That is not what I'm valuing. I'm valuing human rights, but the only thing that really can protect human rights are the people's own government. Our government was instituted to protect our people, to protect our rights. We are the governed. The Iranian people are not the governed. Therefore, the government was not instituted to protect the Iranian people. If it does so, it is overstepping boundaries, and that can lead to a very bad situation in which further grievances against human rights are committed. Now, he said when the genocide occurred in Rwanda, we knew what was going on, and we chose to ignore the genocide because we wanted to uphold my philosophy. That's actually not what happened. After the great publicity that occurred after the Rwandan genocide was discovered by the world, the UN released a statement saying that it did not know what was going on in Rwanda, and that it was very sorry it did not get involved sooner. I'm not saying it should have gotten involved sooner. I'm simply saying that we did actually not know what was going on, so this was not an application of a negative philosophy. Now, he went on to talk about insurance contracts, and he brought up one point against them, and that is the social contract is not a moral obligation, it is a legal obligation. Protecting human rights is moral. Therefore, the social contract, because it was instituted to protect the human rights of the citizens, is a moral and a legal obligation. Is it moral to break a legal obligation? If I agree to cut someone's grass, and then don't do that, instead throw fertilizer on it so it grows even higher, I am violating the legal contract I made. That is immoral. So even if the social contract were merely a legal obligation, violating it and using tax money that was not paid to the government for others but for the citizens would still be immoral. And then that leads me right to his next argument, that taxes are not stealing because the government has the right to take taxes. The government was given its right to take taxes so it could fund the actions it takes to protect the people. That does not mean that the government has an entitlement to all the citizens' money. The government cannot simply come to me and say, you know, you've paid your taxes this year, but we want another $100, so give us $100. That's stealing. I'm only obligated to pay a certain amount of money to the government, and that money I'm obligated to pay is so that the government can protect me, not other people. Moving on, he brought up that assisting other nations can benefit the assisting nations. First, even if the ends are good, that does not justify the means we take. If we steal money for a good purpose, that does not justify the stealing, even if we reach a good end. And secondly, I like to argue that assistance does not always benefit the people. We assisted Osama bin Laden. We got bombed on 9/11. That was not a benefit to the American public. Assistance does not always lead to a benefit for the American public. In fact, if you look at the amount of times assistance has actually hurt us, the amount of times assistance has actually helped us, we see it's actually about even. So the argument here really is that assistance does not always benefit the people. It's almost like flipping a coin and hoping it simply does. So the fact that it does in about 50% of the cases does not justify the government doing it because it harms in other cases. And as Martin Luther King Jr. said, injustice anywhere diminishes justice everywhere. The fact that in a few cases we get a good outcome does not negate the fact that in other cases we have had injustice, and those cases of injustice diminish the greatness that is achieved when we get a just outcome. Moving on, Shane said that soldiers know that they will go where the government sends them, and they sign that contract. The soldier's oath is to protect the Constitution from all threats, foreign and domestic, period. That means that they will go wherever the government sends them so they can protect that Constitution from enemies, foreign and domestic. That does not mean they will go wherever the government sends them so they can protect the German or the Russian Constitution from their enemies. It is a simple contract. The US government says, we will pay you to fight for us, and you will fight for the American public. It is not the soldier's contract is not the soldier signing off all his rights to go and do whatever the Congress may wish him to do. It is signing off his rights so he can go and protect the American people. It is a sacrifice to the American people, not a sacrifice to the world. Now let's look back over the negative philosophy. We have seen that governments have their power to protect the people. That is in the very Declaration of Independence my opponent quoted. We have seen that governments interfering in other nations not only can harm the other nation's rights, but it can also harm the rights of its own citizens. And violating its citizens' rights does not justify a good outcome in the end. I like to close with this quote: "The rights of every man are diminished when one man's rights are threatened." My opponent started with this quote. The rights of all men are diminished when the government steals our money, infringes on our rights to help others. The rights of all men are diminished when the American people's rights are threatened. Therefore, the government should stop threatening the American people's rights and fulfill its duty to the American people and not to any other. Thank you.